Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow is a good movie. No, come back, stay with me. Yes, it is, I promise. Some movies are destined to be forgotten. Others are destined to be hated. Rarely, some films accomplish both simultaneously. Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow is one of those cursed few. But it's also something greater. It's one of the few films that lives up to that pure kid-in-a-candy-store imagination that is so transportative about film, for better and for worse. It's a film made with zeal, exuberance, and joy that manages to inject a genuine, earnest love into the silly 30s-tinged spectacle. It pushed the limits of visual effects technology, innovated the digital set process that has become standard on so many Hollywood films, and introduced a bold new auteur to general audiences. But Kerry Conran, the director of Sky Captain, has never made another feature film. He rarely even does interviews anymore. Sky Captain was a flop, taking in only $58 million worldwide against a $70 million budget. To borrow a phrase from the podcast Blank Check, for all intents and purposes, it's a film that doesn't exist. So how did a film so thoroughly scrubbed from the collective consciousness manage to change Hollywood as we know it? Well, it started with a problem. Kerry Conran and his brother Kevin loved old serials and new technology. For the better part of the 1990s, they worked on a 6-minute short called The World of Tomorrow, a black and white love letter to sleek deco design, swaggering heroes, plucky journalists, and lumbering automatons. But they had no money. $0, negative budget. Their grand ideas outpaced their funds. So Kerry put his CalArts animation training to good use. He painstakingly handcrafted the enormous-seeming World of Tomorrow entirely on an old Apple computer. While a lot of it looks primitive today, its wild scope and slavish attention to the look and feel of those old serials caught the eye of John Avnet, a producer responsible for Inspector Gadget, The Mighty Ducks, and Black Swan, also known as the Perfect Triple Feature. These complete unknowns were then handed somewhere around $70 million, though Kevin Conran disputes this number. They were left alone, essentially, as they made the film without a distributor and without involvement of any of the major studios. Essentially, the Conrans were free to experiment and create one of the most expensive independent movies of all time. In that experimentation, they were able to create their exacting vision alongside A-list Hollywood stars and top-tier VFX talents. To go from rendering individual parts of a giant robot at 5 a.m. on an old Macintosh to the vast resources of a studio seemingly overnight seems like a recipe for a failure. And for a certain definition of failure, it was. In its heedless energy and joy, it reminded me of how I felt the first time I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's like a film that escaped from the imagination directly onto the screen without having to pass through reality along the way. The murky and unpleasant business of Hollywood accounting aside, Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow is just so cool, in that it's so lame, but also so shamelessly fun, even today, especially today. It shines like a bright light of silly swashbuckling hope in a grim, samey landscape of identically paced action blockbusters. Sky Captain might as well be a Quentin Tarantino movie with how much it pulls from its influences. It takes all of the fun whiz-bang elements of old sci-fi serials and just purees them together into a wonderful movie smoothie. It's a tight hour 45, it's chock full of inventive visuals, and has all of the joy of scope and grandness of spectacle of the best Hollywood blockbusters. But it also has the dopey earnestness of a friend sitting you down and talking to you about something they're obsessed with. You may not be completely interested in your friend's raised beds or their foreign stamp collection, but you'll be damned if you aren't a little bit awed by their passion, their joy, their exuberance. And this film has exuberance by the bucket load, because let's be honest, it's using the exuberance to make up for brains. I'm not saying that Sky Captain is high art. It doesn't have anything lofty to say about the human condition, or hubris, or man's inhumanity to man, or anything like that. It's a dumb movie. It has a paper-thin plot, namely a journalist and a flying ace have to figure out who's using giant robots to capture a bunch of scientists, cue the action and hijinks. But the film uses its well-worn and comfortable tropes as an anchor to keep you securely fastened while they literally revolutionize filmmaking in front of your very eyeballs. But so much was made of the groundbreaking technological advancements of Sky Captain that nobody stopped to notice the love and detail put into the craft of the film. The visual language of Sky Captain is absolutely steeped in Golden Age comic books and adventure films, and everything from the lumbering mechanical automatons down to the cheerfully bombastic score by Ed Sheeran works together so well to sell the verisimilitude of the thing. Even through the murky semi-sepia of the movie, you can tell that the lighting is spot on to the movies it's trying to pay tribute to. Nobody ever gets the lighting right. Sure, some of this whole effect is lessened by the now primitive digital effects, but that juxtaposition is adorably strange. Using the height of modern technology to create something so decidedly old school is admirably misguided in a way I deeply respect. And just listen to the score. Ed Sheeran is mostly a composer without a hook. He doesn't have a lot of signature films under his belt, but there's something right place, right time about this matchup that created something magical. Jude Law is honestly pretty perfect as Sky Captain, where he brings a smooth charm to a character that could have otherwise been a more Han Solo, gruff, macho flyboy type, but when set against Gwyneth Paltrow's Polly Perkins, there's an aggressively prickly chemistry there. It has a glimpse of a romantic pairing you'd see in a film noir, but it mostly just reads as a misfire. They both look great, though. They function less as characters and more as archetypes. Law, the confident sophisticate, and Paltrow, the scoop-hungry scrapper. Maybe that's part of where Conran went wrong. In a world where he was creating 90% of the film's universe in the computer, he felt more comfortable treating his actors like iconography as opposed to performers. That being said, for cinematic language that basically didn't exist at the time, the actors acquit themselves pretty well. I can only imagine how disorienting shooting this film must have been. At this point, all green screen type films are fairly common, but in 2004, arriving on set in your 40s garb only to have to react to, well, nothing, must have been a tall order. Nevertheless, somehow Sky Captain comes together into something effortlessly entertaining. A lot of that is thanks to Conran's uncanny sense of the iconic. Each action set piece is complex and impeccably designed, but also incredibly clear in its visual language. They're easy to follow, and they convey scope, tension, and stakes with every shot. It's a lovely, popcorn-fueled matinee sort of movie. Something you'd go to on a lazy Sunday back in the days when Hollywood and movie theaters weren't constantly struggling to keep the lights on in between superhero movies. And the marketing gave this film one heck of a shot. They really pushed this thing. I was there when they were making the push on this one. TV spots everywhere, great posters. They had a free online game that was pretty terrible, and a fan club. They gave out t-shirts to movie theater employees, and some of those employees kept those shirts around for 15 years. They even released a collector's comic book and did a big promotional pre-release screening at San Diego Comic-Con. When Paramount bought the rights to release this thing, it was because they believed it could make money and they expected it to. But it didn't. It flopped. Even though critics were fairly kind to it, audiences mostly rejected it. Could Sky Captain have been successful? Is there any world in which this movie became a hit that launched a franchise or continued Kerry Conran's career? I think so. In an interview with The Telegraph in 2015, Kevin Conran put his finger right on the pulse of where this whole thing went wrong. We walked into John Avnett's office that first day and he said, "What do you want for the production?" And we said, $3 million. We could have done a version of this film for $3 million. It would have been black and white and sans name actors, but even still, this whole thing was going to be under $20 million. How it went from 20 to 70, you tell me. A cheaper film would have looked worse, admittedly, but it could have been an interesting statement. I'd compare it to something like 2006's Mirror Mask, which was directed by famous comic book artist Dave McKean. Mirror Mask was shot on a budget of about $6 million, and it had more of a television production pipeline with the help of the Jim Henson Company. It has that same fantastical, create everything from the ground up blue screen world, but it's so far removed from actual reality that it manages to still function almost 20 years later, even with incredibly dodgy CGI. Could a bare-bones Sky Captain have had the same earth-shattering impact on the film industry, though? Unlikely. Secondly, a cheaper film would have required them to cast no-name actors. As much as I love Jude Law, and boy do I love Jude Law, this might have saved them. There's something about a famous face that attaches expectations. When we go to the movies, we don't see Tony Stark, we see Robert Downey Jr. We don't see Hobbs, we see The Rock. Unknown actors are transportative. When you're plucking a chunk of time out of the past and depositing it in front of our eyeballs here in the future, it can be distracting to see Angelina Jolie, no matter how much fun she's having. Side note, the enormous amount of queer coding they do on Frankie in this film, only to have her have the hots for Sky Captain, is just super 2004, if you get my drift. I can certainly imagine this film with unknowns, but there's one thing Kevin mentioned that has stuck in my head since 2004. Why the hell isn't this movie in black and white? We were a year and a half away from Sin City being a runaway hit with its gritty pulp comic black and white, but Sky Captain gets stuck with this unfortunate middle ground of strange sepias. But Sky Captain aches to be in black and white. That's what separates it from Sin City. Sin City may win points for being stylized, but look at the two side by side. Save for a dozen or so truly gorgeous compositions in the film, Sin City feels like a movie shot in color with the saturation turned down. While Sky Captain, and I know this is going to sound like damning with faint praise here, but stick with me. Sky Captain looks like a Turner colorization. A film shot in and for black and white, and then later turned color to modernize it for contemporary audiences. Maybe they were afraid that people wouldn't want to see a $70 million black and white sci-fi movie. They were probably right. But I made a discovery with the power of Blu-ray, Adobe Premiere, and a basic knowledge of color correction. The film looks perfect in black and white. After studying the original short, I painstakingly applied color and lighting correction in an attempt to make the film match the look and feel of the original short The World of Tomorrow. The result? Compositions feel more complete. The lighting is more on point, and it even occasionally smooths over some of the lackluster animation. When you finally have that last step of verisimilitude, that last puzzle piece that allows you to accept Sky Captain as some kind of lost 30s serial that fell out of some cursed time tunnel, it all starts to click. This one small change really helps you suspend your disbelief. At this point, there's only one piece of the puzzle missing, and it's a gap that can't be bridged, unfortunately. The Conrans were so focused on the newest tools that they decided to shoot the film digitally. Nowadays, that wouldn't be an issue, but in 2004, the tech just wasn't ready yet. As much as this makes me sound like a celluloid snob, Sky Captain needed to be shot on film, maybe even 16mm, something to give it a grain pattern that would be more consistent with the way it was lit, and something more forgivingly glossy than the ultra-sharp, too-smooth perfection of early aughts HD video. If you think about it, Kerry Conran was the first filmmaker to go from zero to let's play with the new toys in one film. He instantly Zemeckised, but without the soul-shuddering terror of the Polar Express. Ugh. Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow died for Hollywood's sins. It died so Sin City could live, so Avatar could live, so the entirety of the modern blockbuster pipeline could live. Digital backlot pioneered it. Using multiple VFX companies to each complete sequences to get your movie finished on time pioneered it. Shooting on digital to have almost instantaneous access to your dailies pioneered it. Sky Captain is the Rosetta Stone of our current age, but it's also simpler and more personal than the impersonal computer-generated beat-em-ups it helped create. Kerry Conran represents the promise and allure of the dream of filmmaking, a monkey's paw version of auteurism. He's the Oppenheimer of the film world, and he gets treated like he's radioactive. He unlocked the door of imagination for any filmmaker with a laptop and a dream, only to have that same door slammed in his face, seemingly for good. And to that I say this: give Kerry Conran another shot. Let the man direct another film. We may have missed a truly fascinating auteur when he threw him in movie jail. The closest director I can compare him to is Robert Rodriguez in the Troublemaker years. A lot of hit and miss, but with a boundless ability to synthesize genre and a real knack for getting a grand scope out of a tiny budget. Give Conran $10 million, a green screen warehouse, and Rodriguez's Troublemaker Studios setup. Hell, give him a go at this new virtual production workflow that made such big waves with The Mandalorian. Let this pioneer of cinema make a movie off the grid that follows his bliss, and it would be interesting, even if it's not great. We owe him that much. Over the last decade or so, Kerry Conran has been quiet, behind the scenes. He's apparently actively working on projects, but after several of his follow-up films got trapped in production hell and various other layers of Hollywood limbo, he seemingly stopped actively pursuing feature filmmaking. Gumdrop, his only other directorial effort, is a cute short that shows that same love of classic Hollywood mixed with a zeal for the latest technological achievements. It tells the story of a robotic actress auditioning for a role in a movie, and it does a pretty fun job intercutting its digital characters with footage from the golden age of Hollywood, while making its lead robotic character expressive and charming. I've linked the short in the description, so you should give it a watch. For the longest time, Kerry wouldn't even speak to the press about Sky Captain. Most of the interviews on the subject are from his brother, who has a book of behind-the-scenes stories and production art coming out in April of this year. But in 2019, Kerry Conran finally broke his silence and conducted an interview with Drew Turney at MovieHole.com. He doesn't seem bitter. He doesn't seem defeated. He seems eager, aware of his failures, but still excited to push the boundaries of storytelling technology. Let's hope he gets one more chance to amaze. So is Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow a great film? No, not really. But is it a good movie? Absolutely. It's also cheap on Blu-ray because nobody cares about it. So give it a go and salute it as it passes, because even though it might have failed, if it wasn't for Sky Captain, we might not have the World of Tomorrow. Thank you for watching Too Many Tapes. I generally review old VHS tapes and weird kid shows, but I have a lot of love for this dopey movie, and nobody can stop me from gushing about it. Nobody. So, thank you for sitting through it. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to get notifications about new episodes. I tend to post about once a month, but you never know when I'm going to get so excited about something that I just have to make an episode about it. If you want to help me completely cocoon myself in an impenetrable sarcophagus of VHS tapes, consider donating $1 or more a month to my Patreon. If you donate $10 or more a month, you are Sky Captain, flying ace, and you soar into the stratosphere in an enormous font. If you donate $5 or more a month, you're Dex, Sky Captain's faithful tech whiz sidekick, and you get early access to episodes and the opportunity to vote on tapes for me to review when I'm feeling particularly indecisive. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time on Too Many Tapes. Could a bare-bones Sky Captain have had the same earth-shattering impact on the film industry?